Victoria has recorded 567 locally acquired COVID-19 cases, as Melburnians prepare for another 5 weeks of hard lockdown under the state's new restrictions roadmap. The state has also recorded another death of a woman with COVID-19 in her 70s from Moreland. The rising case numbers came as an anti-vaccination protest turned wild outside the CFMEU offices in Melbourne CBD. More than 500 construction workers protested outside the CFMEU construction, forestry, maritime, mining and energy union headquarters on Elizabeth Street against mandatory vaccinations. The Victorian government is requiring all construction workers to have at least one COVID-19 vaccine dose by September 23. Union Secretary John Setka tried to speak to the largely unmasked crowd using a megaphone, offering to listen to workers. But when some in the crowd grew agitated, he asked workers, "Do you want to shut the whole building industry down?" The protesters started chanting, shut it down," and throwing insults at Mr. Setka. Tensions rose further and Mr. Setka had a crate and bottles thrown at him. Security guards were forced to take him inside and the doors to the headquarters were locked. Mr. Setka told 3AW he believes the CFMEU is being unfairly targeted for decisions made by the Victorian government. "We're virtually being blamed for everything, which is totally untrue. All we've ever done is try and keep our industry working safely," he said. Mr. Setka said the union was blindsided by the Department of Health's recommendations last week and had held numerous conversations to change guidelines with respect to amenities and lunchroom arrangements with little success. "So how all of a sudden it's all our fault is beyond me," he said. Mr. Setka said he was disappointed by today's protest and claimed it had been hijacked by more extreme organisations. "Some of that violence and throwing projectiles and all that was absolutely, totally unacceptable. Absolutely disgusting," he said. He reiterated that the union has not officially thrown its support behind the mandating of the vaccine. "We have never once said that we support mandatory vaccinations, we believe it's a choice for people to make." Premier Daniel Andrews said it was an illegal gathering, but he did not conclude that a sizable number of construction industry workers had no respect for coronavirus restrictions. "What I would say is that protests don't work. Getting vaccinated works, following the rules works. That's how you stay open, that's how you get open if you're not open now," he said. Mr. Andrews said none of the decisions about the rules that apply on a building site was taken lightly. "A good deal of work goes into that and I'd ask people to follow those rules," he said. Majority of cases aged under 50. There are currently 5,675 active cases in the state, with 85% under the age of 50. Mr. Andrews said it was a pandemic of the unvaccinated and these numbers bear that out. There are 209 people in hospital, 59 of those are in intensive care and 40 are on a ventilator. Mr. Andrews said of the cases in hospital, 86% were not vaccinated and 12% were partially vaccinated. Just 3 people in hospital were fully vaccinated. Mr. Andrews said nearly 40,000 coronavirus vaccinations were administered yesterday in the state hubs. "I think that is our busiest Sunday we have had," he said. The state's new cases were detected from 50,915 test results received on Sunday, when Mr. Andrews unveiled a roadmap indicating lockdown should begin to ease in Melbourne from October 26. That step is based on the projected date when 70% of Victorians aged 16 plus will be vaccinated and could come soon if the state's vaccination rollout accelerates. Moderna, another tool in our kit bag. A third vaccine, Moderna, will be available this week in 440 Victorian pharmacies. The president of the Pharmacy Guild Victoria, Anthony Tassoni, said availability of Moderna was an exciting news story. "It is another tool in our kit bag to combat the COVID-19 virus pandemic," he said. Mr. Tassoni said people aged 12 years to 59 years old were eligible for Moderna, which is an mRNA vaccine like Pfizer. He said it was safe to use while pregnant or breastfeeding. "Please, if you are pregnant and expecting, please get vaccinated," he said. In Victoria alone, for the rest of September, there will be more than 300,000 Moderna doses delivered to community pharmacies across Victoria, and that will ramp up further in October and November. "So this is great news for patients and another option for our community and families to be able to protect themselves in the community," he said. Household transmission very strong. The state's COVID-19 commander Jerome Weimar said 85% of the state's active cases were in Melbourne's northern and western suburbs. Mr. Weimar said household transmission was very strong. He said more than half of the state's cases today were in households where there had been other positive cases. Of today's 567 cases, 82% were aged under 50. 357 cases were in northern suburbs including Craigieburn, Roxburgh Park and Broadmeadows. 137 cases were in western suburbs including Tarniat, Truganina and Altona North. 45 cases were in the southeastern suburbs including Dandenong, Rowville and Parkenham. 12 cases were in eastern suburbs including Doncaster and Ringwood North. 14 cases in regional Victoria including 5 new cases in Ballarat linked to a construction site in Lilydale. There were no new cases in Geelong but 2 cases in Mirrabul, just outside Greater Geelong. Painful path out of lockdown. The Premier said the painful path out of lockdown would put immense strain on the health system, but was necessary in order to pass through the gateway to a new stage of the pandemic. The roadmap was met with dismay by the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is calling for greater freedoms once the 70% full vaccination target is met. But the nursing union has welcomed the cautious approach to easing restrictions to prevent healthcare workers from facing impossible decisions about who gets a hospital bed. Last night the city of Greater Geelong, the Surf Coast Shire and the Mitchell Shire went into lockdown in response to a surge of cases.